There's a lot of benefit to reading English, but don't be discouraged if you find it difficult. Hello and welcome to Emma's ESL English. Today we are going to talk about the difference between creative writing and daily English. I think a lot of people can really struggle when they want to read something that's maybe a book or a novel in English. I'm currently reading novels with 3 students, which is really fun, especially because 2 of them are Terry Pratchett novels. I'm starting youngsters off on Terry Pratchett. It's very thrilling. I love it. But the problem is that when we use English to write, it's quite different to the way that we use English to speak. You probably already noticed that. So it can make it so that people don't really want to read English books because it feels like it's too much, it's too stressful. And part of the challenge is to try and identify when you're learning words that are going to be useful to you in your daily life and when you're learning words that are really only used in a descriptive context. And the reality is that there is a lot of English that you are not going to use on a daily basis, but you certainly could hear in books and novels. And the reason for this is that when we're writing in English, especially some kind of novel that's descriptive writing, really what we want to do is we want to get across a lot of pictures in your head, right? And the second thing is we don't like to repeat ourselves. You will notice this also in newspaper articles. We really don't like to repeat ourselves. So it means that you might start off with a simple word for that thing. And as you go down the article, it becomes much more complicated because they're digging into the thesaurus to try and find another way to say the same thing. And you'd be surprised how many writers really don't like to repeat the same word again and again and again. So it means that when you're reading English books, you're going to come across a lot of descriptions that are not really daily English. The good thing is it means that you're going to learn a lot of vocabulary that's going to be really nice. Is it going to be useful vocabulary? Hit and miss, really. The other challenge is when you're reading the books, you're likely to get a lot of the way that the author thinks and feels and speaks and says things, which might include a lot of local language, or we've talked before about idioms cut in half. That could be the way that a particular writer is doing things. What I want to do today is read to you from 4 books. Each one of them is very, very different, and it will give you some idea of what I'm talking about, I hope. These are the 4 books. I'm not kidding when I say they're very different. First of all, we will start with the most difficult and the only man that we're reading today, and his name is Hugh Walpole. Hugh Walpole and his dog. Love that. Hugh Walpole was a writer, and he came to the Lake District and he fell in love with the Lake District. And he lived here for a long time, and he wrote a series of books based on a family, which he called the Herries. They weren't a real family. And he wrote this series of books based in and around the Lake District. This was the first of the series that he wrote. It's called Rogue Herries, and it is about the father who brings his family and moves up to the Lake District. These books are set in the 1800s. So the version that we see of the Lake District is this historical version of the area. For those of you who maybe are joining us, I live near the Lake District. I'm on the west coast of the north of England. And so the Lake District is right next to me. I'm on the seaside part, but it's very easy for me to get there. So we talk about it quite a lot. This part is right from the very beginning of the book. And the first thing we recognize is talking about eagles flying. We don't have eagles in Cumbria anymore. That's depressing. There was a period in time when British people used to steal eggs from all of the nests. There was like this whole thing about collecting eggs. It's not surprising, right? You steal all of the eggs from all of the nests, you get no more baby birds. Yeah. Eagles are pretty rare in the UK now. We do have golden eagles still flying in Scotland. There are some sea eagles in parts of Scotland. Here in the Lake District, we have osprey and we have buzzards and we have kestrels. These are all birds of prey, but they are not eagles. This is completely irrelevant to the story that we're going to read. This is descriptive writing, total descriptive writing. This is giving you a picture of the Lake District from a bird's eye view. Over this country, when the giant eagle flings the shadow of his wing, the land is darkened. So compact is it that the wing covers all its extent in one pause of the flight. The sea breaks on the pale line of the shore. To the eagle's proud glance, waves run into the foot of the hills that are like rocks planted in green water. From Whinlatter to Black Coombe, the clouds are never still. The tarns, like black, unwinking eyes, watch their chase, and the colours are laid out in patterns on the rocks and are continually changed. The eagle can see the shadows rise from their knees at the base of Scafell and Gable. He can see the black, precipitous flanks of the screes washed with rain, and the dark hummocks of Bordale crags flash suddenly with gold. So small is the extent of this country that the sweep of the eagle's wing caresses all of it. But there is no ground in the world more mysterious, no land at once so bare in its nakedness and so rich in its luxury, so warm with sun and so cold in pitiless rain, so gentle and pastoral, so wild and lonely, with lake and sea and river. There is always the sound of running water, and its strong people have their feet in the soil and are independent of all man. Don't be surprised if you didn't understand any of that. There's a lot of places: Whinlatter, Black Coombe, the Tarns, Scafell, Gable, Bordale, Screes. These are all mountains or places within the Lake District that he is naming. Basically what he's saying is, should an eagle fly over the Lake District, it will be very fast, and the eagle, if it was high enough, the shadow of its wing could cover the Lake District because it's such a small part of the country, actually. And then he's describing what the Lake District would look like were you to be all the way up there where the eagle is flying. I mean, that's not exactly daily English, is it? It's beautiful. It has a lot of words in it, like unwinking, that we would never use in spoken English. It is beautiful, but this is not how we speak on a daily basis. So a lot of that is really about describing what we're seeing, but really it's about giving you that feeling of the Lake District. So the next one I want to do is kind of a similar idea. This is Elif Shafak's Island of the Missing Trees. Oh, I love this book so much. There is a fig tree in this book, and it has its own opinion about things, and it's brilliant. I love it. So similar to the one that we just read, this is setting scene for the book. Once upon a memory, at the far end of the Mediterranean Sea, there lay an island so beautiful and blue that many travelers, pilgrims, crusaders, and merchants who fell in love with it either wanted never to leave or tried to tow it with hemp ropes all the way back to their own countries. Legends, perhaps. But legends are there to tell us what history has forgotten. It has been many years since I fled that place on board a plane inside a suitcase made of soft leather, never to return. I have since adopted another land, England, where I have grown and thrived, but not a single day passes that I do not yearn to be back home, motherland. It must still be there where I left it, rising and sinking with the waves that break and foam upon its rugged coastline. At the crossroads of 3 continents, Europe, Africa, Asia, and the Levant, that vast and impenetrable region vanished entirely from the maps today. A map is a 2-dimensional representation with arbitrary symbols and incised lines that decide who is to be our enemy and who is to be our friend, who deserves our love and who deserves our hatred, and who our sheer indifference. Cartography is another name for stories told by winners, for stories told by those who have lost. There isn't one. Here is how I remember it. Golden beaches, turquoise waters, lucid skies. Every year, sea turtles would come ashore to lay their eggs on the powdery sand. The late afternoon wind brought along the scent of gardenia, cyclamen, lavender, honeysuckle. Branching ropes of wisteria climbed up whitewashed walls, aspiring to reach the clouds, hopeful in the way only dreamers are. It's such a good book. So this first bit is actually the tree telling you where the tree has come from. And the tree was taken to England secretly in a suitcase. But again, this is descriptive English. We could just say a tree was wrapped up in soft black leather, put inside a suitcase and brought to England, but before it was on the island of Cyprus. It doesn't sound as good though, does it? So that's the problem. When we're writing novels, we are trying to give you a story, trying to craft a picture to put inside your head. We're also trying to give you the emotions of the place, that feeling of what it's like to be there. So there's an awful lot of description that's going into it that just doesn't really go into, I was put in a suitcase and came on an airplane. This is a totally different kind of story. This is a romance. It was actually a movie first, and then they wrote a book about it. It's quite a cute movie. I really like this movie. This is just a very short snippet from the book. Jane saw that he was looking at her in utter bafflement. She had seen a similar expression on his face earlier that day over a complicated sandwich and a cappuccino at the cafe next door. Pushing his coffee to one side, he had complained that until meeting her, he'd imagined his English not only to be fluent but idiomatic, and prided himself on being almost certainly the only living Frenchman who knew his brew from his brew. However, in conversation with her, he often felt like a foreigner, he said. No, correction, like an alien. She hadn't said so, but she'd secretly enjoyed the thought that she unsettled him. In this case, then, this is a romance story, so we're not looking at the complicated level of language that we had in the previous two books, but we are trying to get across an idea and personalities. Things like a complicated sandwich and a cappuccino. Even just from that tiny little piece of information, I can tell you that we're talking about a more expensive cafe. It doesn't actually tell us a whole lot about anything particular, but it gives us a picture in our head of where they've gone. In utter bafflement, we could just say he looked confused. That works. It tells us the same thing. And here we have a play on words. He prided himself on being almost certainly the only living Frenchman who knew his brew from his brew. So this is a play on words. BRU is the first one, which is iron brew. Iron brew is a very, very orange, sugary, fizzy drink in Scotland. You won't find it outside of Scotland, but in Scotland, it is one of the most common drinks that people have. So that's iron brew. And the second one is BROO, which is for tea, brewing your tea. Do you have a brew? And that means, do you have some tea? He's been in Scotland long enough to know the difference. So that tells us more about his character, gives us some information about his character. It also gives us some information about Scotland and some local language that Scottish people can smile at the inside joke here. If you're not Scottish, you don't get this joke at all. And finally, Gorillas in the Mist. Superb. If you haven't read Gorillas in the Mist, you really must. But prepare to cry. Not today. But if you decide to read Gorillas in the Mist, it's going to make you cry, without a doubt. So I'm going to read you a little bit from the acknowledgements. Many of us have dreams or ambitions we hope to fulfill someday. My own, to go to Africa to study the mountain gorillas, might never have succeeded had it not been for the Henry family of Louisville, Kentucky, who loaned me the collateral for my first safari to Africa in 1963. It was at that time I met the gorillas of the Virunga volcanoes in the then Democratic Republic of the Congo, and Dr. Louis S.B. Leakey at Old Valley Gorge in Tanzania. 3 years later, Dr. Leakey chose me to undertake a long-term field study of the mountain gorillas. From that day until his death in 1972, he was a constant source of encouragement and optimism. I shall always remember Dr. Leakey as I last saw him, standing on the observation deck of the Nairobi airport to see me off to Rwanda and the gorillas. While his white hair streamed in the breeze, he cheerfully waved his aluminium crutches in the air. Even as the plane taxied down the runway, the silver glitter of Dr. Leakey's waving crutches was still visible. Dr. Leakey's fervent hope that the Mountain Gorilla Research Project would be as successful as Dr. Jane Goodall's great study of free-living chimpanzees. Again, not really English we would use on a daily basis. If we were to say this, we could say lots of us have dreams and hopes. My hope was to go to Africa and study the gorillas. I met SB Leakey in Tanzania, and he asked me to take on this project. Even though we're only in the acknowledgements, she's really trying to create a picture for us. She wants to bring Dr. Leakey to life, and she wants to honor his memory and really make him come alive in people's memories. So that's why we have this picture of him with his hair waving in the breeze and his crutches that he's waving to really bring him to life. That's it, we're finished. Don't be surprised if you struggle when you want to read an English book. It's going to be slow going, even if you're pretty fluent in speaking English, because now you're looking at a different kind of English. That's one of the reasons that we talk about learning English specific to your field, because each field also has specific English. Definitely, it's beneficial to read English books. I would say it's better to go with pretty light, easy books, mystery stories, things like that, that have a lot of conversation in them. There's a lot of benefit to reading English, but don't be discouraged if you find it difficult, because it is a lot of description to try and give you that picture in your head. So it's not necessarily the English that you learned at school, and it's not necessarily the English that you would use every day. So take your time. I read something once that suggested if you want to read a book, scan the page. If you can read everything and there's only 2 or 3 words that you don't know, it's probably a little bit easy. If there's 5 words that you don't know, that's probably pretty good. If you're getting into 10 plus words that you don't know on a page, then it's probably a bit difficult for you, and you should maybe try and find something a little easier. That's partly because you're probably going to have to look up every one of those words, and that's going to get really tiring. If you're doing 10 words per page, it's going to be slow going, tiring, and you're not going to really feel motivated to do it. I think that's a pretty good measure. I hope that's useful. See you next time. Bye.